today I want to talk about the top causes of why people are financially illiterate. I hate to use the word poor, but their financial situation is not good, and enlighten you on some of the reasons why that is and what you shouldn't be doing, so then you can go back and watch a lot of the other content we have on the things on how to combat these and what you should be doing. So I got a list of 10 that we're going to talk about here today. And the first one is just lack of overall financial education. And of course, one of my favorite things to ask people is, where did you learn about money and finance? And most of them, if they're lucky, they might say their mom and dad, maybe a grandparent, maybe a coworker, or they'll say they looked online. And, looking online is a newer one that people started saying to me, but they don't teach you anything about actual personal finances. And what's so frustrating about this is when you're in high school or you're in college, and not saying these aren't things that you need to learn, but they're things that most people don't use, such as physics, calculus, some kind of science. A lot of things now you can just ask the questions on ChatGPT and you can learn these things, but they don't teach you about money, investing, taxes, accounting, like any of the things that you might actually need to run a household financially. And most parents, when in my main gig here selling real estate, I talk to many, many people who are very well financially educated. And I talk to many, many more that are not, who have no idea how any of this personal finance stuff works. And so, not saying that there's certain things in school we shouldn't learn. I took calculus in college, never use it again ever for any reason. But money and finance is something that you deal with every single day. Number 2, predatory financial institutions. Yes. So whether it is student loans, credit cards, car loans, buy now, pay later, which back in the day when I was a kid, we used to call putting things on layaway. You young bucks won't know about this, but if you're an older person like me, you remember when you were able to put things on layaway. And so banks will hand out loans, whether they are car loans or credit cards. When you're in college, my God, they're sending you credit card statements and credit card offerings left and right on how can we get this person into debt. And the reason they want you into debt, we've talked about many times in other videos, is they want to get you trapped there. They want to get you start paying there. And they want you to be able to just barely make enough to get by to make all the minimum payments so that they can keep making money and finance off you. And then a lot of times to me, it is so freaking sad, especially some of these, payday loan companies and the amounts of interest rates that they're charging people, that sometimes people are just bad financially and other times people just hit a hard spot in their life. And it just sucks for you when that happens. So you've got to be really careful and educated about how it works when you borrow money, even for things like a mortgage. Some people don't understand, how that works and how they're getting into those things. And I could talk specifically about how a mortgage works, but usually the interest rate on a mortgage is more in that 6-7% range. A lot of people have lower right now, but typically over my real estate career, you have a more standard rate, not these crazy high rates for car loans, credit card loans, all that kind of good stuff. So just know you got to watch out for predatory, financial systems. The third one is the cultural pressure to spend. I can remember many years ago when we were really early in our real estate career, we were making a pretty good living and we were doing really well financially. And I can remember coming off the Great Recession and I'm standing in my office building. And this office building that I shoot these videos in, me, my ex-wife, and a business partner, we own this 8,000 square foot commercial office building. And I remember back in 2011, 12, 13, when the real estate market just started getting good again, walking out this door right here to my left, looking over in the patio and looking at the cars in the parking lot. And it was a freaking car show out there of new cars, expensive cars. And I remember looking out there and I said, we own the building. And I know I was selling more real estate than most of the people here. And we had the 2 oldest cars in the entire parking lot. And I don't know what it is about the pressure to spend money, to show people that you're wealthy, like having fancy things and fancy cars and stuff like that. But it is crazy. And especially now with social media. Back in those days, when I was in my 20s and 30s, social media wasn't a thing yet. So you weren't able to sort of flash what you were doing more to a broad audience. Maybe your neighbors or your friends might know, but it wasn't nearly the pressure that you see nowadays. And so again, I learned this as many of you seen in this video, this watch of mine. And this is an old school Rolex that was my dad's watch from the 80s that he bought. I have no idea what he paid for it. I started wearing it 15 years ago when he passed away. It's almost 16 years ago now. And it's funny when I first started wearing it, how people would make comments about it or say something to me about it. like I was being flashy or showing off, and they had no idea how I even got it. And I would never spend $10,000+ on a watch. But because I inherited this my dad's watch, I wear it. And then people make shitty comments about it. Some are just interested in it because they really love Rolexes. Others just think you're being flashy. And it's like, I don't care about all that, but you got to find a way to have the cultural pressure to keep up with the Joneses, another old school term, on you don't have to do those things. Just find a way that makes you happy in your personal money and finance game. Another big financial pressure is college. They pushed hard when I was a young person going to college. And if you can afford college, great. If you can't, do not go into massive amounts of debt for a degree that's not going to create an income for yourself. And if you're going to be a teacher or someone that you need the degree, find an inexpensive way to go to an inexpensive college and get that degree. You know, if you're a teacher, you don't need to go to Harvard or Stanford. You can go to the local community college and go to your local college and find a way to get your teaching credentials to be a teacher and not go into massive amounts of debt. It just doesn't make any kind of sense whatsoever. Another thing is, of course, this is causing is delayed adulthood. And when I say delayed adulthood, I had my daughter on a video recently. We were talking about these things. So she's 24, graduated college 2 years ago. And for now, she's living with me. And she's only living with me because we're trying to help her get ahead financially. And she hasn't found anybody yet to be a roommate with her. And she can't really afford to go out and live on her own because then she would be just kind of cutting it razor thin. So we're trying to help her get ahead a little bit financially before she kind of goes out on her own. But when you have these conversations between her and her grandmothers, who are all around 80-ish years old, it's funny how different their perspective is on what's going on out in the real world versus what the 20 and 30-year-olds are seeing out in the real world. And you see a million videos about how everything became more expensive and the elevation of how everything became more expensive has gone up dramatically more than the income levels. And so because of that, there's this, missed economy where older people are killing it because they have assets and homes and stock market accounts, and those people are crushing it. And young people who don't have a whole lot yet aren't, and they're missing the opportunity because everything got so expensive, they can't even get in the game. And so you just have to understand that, things may take a little longer to get going, but you have to get yourself financially educated. Again, this is part of why people are losing this. They don't understand the financial literacy concepts that they need to know. And that's what we're going to be teaching here on this channel. The other thing is a lot of people have no discipline and no plan. I talk to a lot of my daughter's friends about this sometimes and some of my son's friends, and now they're all starting to get better about having plans and having some discipline. But as much as we joke about the $5 coffees and the $20 lunches out and the overspending on $50 or $100 out on a Friday night, you don't think of these as being that big of a deal, but they are. And if you start overspending and going on trips and buying clothes and eating out and doing the things you can't afford yet and you don't have a plan, you're just not only delaying the start of your winning, but you're making it worse because you're not even, you're just going backwards and you're not going forwards. It'd be great even if you were just staying flat, but if you start building up these debts and start going negative, it's just going to be a really bad thing for you as far as that goes. Another huge issue with financial literacy and why people are broke is it's way too much easy access to high interest debt. So credit cards, car loans, it's amazing to me how quickly people will let you borrow money. And then what happens is because you can afford the payment, you're able to hide behind the fact that you've got all this debt, and it just crushes you long term. You just have to understand, if you don't know how compound interest works against you, you sure as heck aren't going to understand how it works for you. And these are just some of those terms you just have to understand. And there are all kinds of tools and calculators all over the internet. But those high interest, when you start paying 15, 20, 25, 30% interest on things, you're never going to win. It is impossible to win. And you've got to figure out a way to be disciplined enough. Like, this is that one thing, focus it. Listen to me right now. If there's only one part of this video you watch, if there's only one clip we cut up and use, this is it. They want to talk about systems, and you need systems for everything. And you only win as good as your systems are, and you can't win long-term with discipline. I call bullshit. You have to have some discipline. And that doesn't mean perfection. It means some discipline. So whether that's in your food and nutrition, whether that's in your money and finance, whether that's in your relationship with your kids, your spouses, your friends, if there is no discipline, then you are never going to win. So you just got to be careful of the high interest loans and debts and easy access to credit. It's horrible. Another one is a myth of I can wait and do it later. Now, you can wait and do it later, but if you do, it just becomes harder and harder and harder. If you start off in your 20s and you start putting money away, the time and compounding that you have over 30, 40, 50 years. Because again, if you're in your 20s and you're healthy, you're probably going to live well into your 80s and 90s these days. It's going to be a lot longer life and a lot longer, quote unquote, retirement period. You have to understand that if you start sooner, becomes a much easier game to win. Now, for someone that maybe screwed it up, messed it up, and now you're in your mid 30s or early 40s, or you're like me and you're 54, you can still win. It just becomes a different game that you're playing. And again, I always say it's you against you, not you against someone else. So don't worry about what other people are doing. Worry about what you're doing and how you can win, and how you winning isn't at the expense of someone else losing. Everyone can win. You just have to understand what it is that you want. When I talk about that, if you've ever heard me talk about my two mothers, and I talk about this story all the time because my two mothers are both financially free. They are financially independent. Neither one of them has worked in probably 20 plus years at an actual go to work job. Not that they don't work, but not an actual trade your time for money job. And one's net worth is dramatically more, and one's lifestyle is dramatically more than the other, but they're both happy. They're both healthy. They both live the lives they want to live, do the fun things they want to do. And so again, they're not competing with each other. They're both just doing what they want to do to win. So, that's just the way that goes. Now, a big thing that I hear when I talk to people is they have this fear and shame about money, that they don't understand it. They don't want to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about how much money you make, how much your net worth is, how should I invest my money? And they never want to admit if they're struggling financially. And that's why I talk about mine. If you didn't see my video about where I talk about at one point in my life, I was $750,000 in debt. I want to talk about that story. I want you to understand it isn't perfect. And I did all the right things. And then the Great Recession crushed me and kicked our ass. And then we went into massive amounts of debt. Not because I didn't understand what we were doing, but because all of a sudden you had big expenses, your income went to nothing, and we were losing. And I talk about it all the time because I want people to understand, even though I'm in a great place now, it is not this straight line to success that starts on the bottom left and just goes up to the right, and you just make more, investments always go up and you win, win, win. No. Housing markets go up and down, the stock market goes up and down. And so when people try to tell you should only do one thing or another, that is not the case. And so having a conversation should not be taboo. It should be something we talk about more and more. And even if some people, they get to specific where they don't want to talk specific numbers, you can say whether you're doing good or bad, or you're not feeling like you're winning. And I feel like the more you can be specific and have somebody you trust and talk to is a good thing to do. I understand that takes time. And it's one of the reasons why in my real estate business, we help people sell homes for bad reasons, because they don't want to talk about this stuff. So you have to go there. And then the biggest one, and number 10, this is the last one on my list, and I don't think I even numbered them all, but is the lack of real live mentors or examples. And for those of you who don't have real life mentors and examples, here I am for you. I'm trying to be a real life mentor and example. I'm trying to be someone that can influence you and let you understand that if most people just did the basics of financial literacy and the basics to get their finances in order, they would win. On my website, we have a little sheet. You can click on it. It's the top 11 things you need to win at the money, to win at the game of money and finance. And yes, there are way more than that I would love for people to do. But for many people that are living paycheck to paycheck, or maybe you have a negative net worth, if we just got you to do these 10, 11 things and put them in place, and that's all you ever did for your whole life, you would win at this game. You would get to a point financially where you probably never thought you could, and access things that you never thought that maybe you could access in your life. And I want you to win at the game of money and finance. I want you to understand how all this works. That's funny. My phone just rang. Somebody calling about trying to ask me some questions about this stuff, but you have to understand how this works. And most people, your financial situations aren't good. The ones that aren't good, obviously some people have good financial situations, but the reason why a lot of people's financial situations aren't good isn't because you're lazy or you're dumb or it's just lack of understanding. It's because nobody taught you the rules of the game. Nobody taught you the basic financial literacy principles. And the few that know them, they're the ones who win. And so I want to be able to help coach you and train you and teach you these rules and fundamental principles and teach you how to win at this game. So hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully this is something that will give you a little positive outlook on if you're in a bad spot, it isn't your fault. Let's dig in. Let's get the information. And if you have specific questions, DM me, email me, reach out to me. I am easy to find. If you type my name in, Brian Lessinger, I will pop up on the internet. You can be on my real estate website. You can be on my money and finance website. You can find me, and I want to help you. You don't know me, so whatever you talk to me about, it goes in, it goes out. I'm probably won't see you in person ever again. And so there's no fear of having a conversation with you. And I've had plenty of people already do it. And I've helped a lot of people here locally win as well. So hopefully that's helpful. Subscribe to the channel, share the content information with your friends. Don't be afraid to talk about these things. And hopefully then going forward, you can also clean this up for yourselves and win at this game.